Once upon a time, there was a beautifully framed mirror. Not a particularly special mirror in itself, if I'm being frank, although it might have been once, but mirrors have no memory, so it never could tell me. They can only reflect the moment and a snapshot, not a lifetime or a whole story. That is one of the beautiful things about mirrors. At the time of our story, wherever the beautifully framed mirror had been before, now it found itself outside a busy train station toilet, in the walkway where men and women split and go their separate ways. It would be rushed by and rarely loitered at, reflecting stressed faces or backs of heads as people walked away, shaking their hands and breaking into a little run to make it to their platform in time. It was a walkway, walk-by kind of mirror, with a walk-away-fast kind of view. The beautifully framed mirror had been there for years. At least it felt like it had, because sometimes it would feel a ripple of a face it had perhaps seen before and felt was familiar. Or a person might hold their own gaze a second longer than their usual swoosh past, and the mirror would wonder, are they talking to me? But the feeling would pass as fast as the next face filled its frame. And then a child would call for its mother, and the mirror would wish it could angle itself down and see the little ones that it often heard but rarely saw, unless a daddy happened to carry one on his shoulders, and then they were usually giggling and happy, sometimes even waving right into the mirror's heart. So the mirror was fixed and its passers-by were fast. But at one time, on some special day, when the antique glass roof of the train station was clean enough and a cloud-free sky allowed it, the beautifully framed mirror flashed a ray of sunlight right into the eyes that usually all too briefly glazed over its surface. And that light was so blinding, so bright, that it could even stop a train, because it was a strange light that let the passer-by who was passing by so split-second fast just very briefly glimpse themselves as they truly could be, beautiful beyond the silly standards of this world. And more than once, when this happened, there were madcap, comic, crazy collisions in the walkway, as someone's split-second shock stumble started off a sort of domino effect, which shuddered its way back to platform 2, and so made the train, departing sometimes up to 7 minutes late. Now our beautifully framed mirror got quite good at its little sunlight trick. If a mirror could laugh, it would have chuckled with delight when it learnt that it could send out this breathtaking secondary sunlight. It would bounce off a businessman's glinting spectacles, or a lady's locket, or sometimes even off the train window as it pulled into the station. It learnt to summon up a rainbow in a nanosecond, that it would then catch and reflect straight out onto an unsuspecting passer-by. The mirror liked to pick passers-by who looked as if they were just coming down with a cold, or had broken up with their girlfriend, or were wearing extremely painful shoes. And always the passer-by would stop, just for a heartbeat, and hang awe-struck in that glowing reflection, asking themselves, is that really me? The mirror would will itself to whisper back, yes, do you see how beautiful you truly are? But it knew it never really could whisper, as another very wonderful quality of mirrors is that they cannot speak, which is almost as wonderful as their lack of memory. So, in less than a moment, these golden moments were gone, and the station master's whistle or the chatter of the cleaning lady would jolt the mirror back to its long waiting game, waiting for a time when the sun might break through to be bounced out for others to bathe in, for a very precious heartbeat again. At the time we spoke, winter was coming, and the mirror had a strange feeling that when the passers-by covered themselves with more clothes, it somehow had less chance to bounce the light into the eyes of those rushing past. The time felt suddenly darker, and a sense of foreboding started to crackle in its crystals as hats and scarves and gloves piled on to its passers-by. Each layer of clothing felt a sign in itself that the fun was over for another year. Or maybe, just maybe, the beautifully framed mirror had heard that there was going to be a refurbishment of the old station, and that the entrance to the toilets would be moved from just next to the florist's, as it had never felt quite right, and the mirror's walkway was to become the back wall of a takeaway donut machine. But let's not be silly, because mirrors can't work out such clever plans, can they? Or feel a foreboding dread. The best that can be said is it just didn't feel as bright. We've all been there. The sunlight wasn't easy to capture, and the bouncing slipped into that vague memory place too. Did I do something sparkling once? The mirror was asking itself, as one day a man with a tape measure paced the walkway and stopped, not even to look properly into the mirror, but to pick at the flaking edges of its beautiful frame and try to jiggle it about on its fixings. His glasses were square, black-framed, without even a hint of a glint, and his eye was too busy spotting the florist's deep cleavage bouncing in the corner of the mirror to change his focus and really see his own reflection. Why bother any more? The mirror thought to itself, feeling an overwhelming sense of hopelessness, and that soon an eternal view of a bland storage cupboard wall was its fate, or worse, that it might be shattered into a jagged, senseless, disjointed jigsaw at the bottom of a skip. But behind the black glasses man, a girl was standing, some way off, not rushing anywhere. Maybe she's thinking about buying flowers for a friend, the mirror thought. But why is she looking at me? Is someone finally speaking to me? But the mirror started to suspect that somehow the girl had bounced her spirit into its frame, and that's why this winter now felt the darkest ever. The girl just looked and looked, as everyone else rushed by and only glimpsed. She gazed blankly, as if she could see right through the mirror, see through the wall, see through her own reflection. But the mirror had nothing to give her, no chink of light, nothing to sparkle, no hope of a rainbow in this overcast old place. "You're beautiful," it tried to cry, but knew she neither heard nor saw it, although she eerily continued to look and stare and gaze. And then the girl turned. She walked slowly, which itself stood out like a screaming shaft of light in dark chaos. Then she decisively came to a stop, right on the edge of the platform, with her toes reaching, finding and creeping over the very curb, as the crowds jostled and shuffled and bustled for their train around her. At that moment, the man with the black frame glasses jiggled the mirror forcibly in frustration one last time, and the florist caught the line of his leering eye and suddenly stopped bending over the hydrangeas she was arranging and stood up very sharply, deliberately removing the unintended cleavage invitation to the man's dirty imagination. The diamond heart her husband had bought her swung and spun in defiance at her neckline, almost in slow motion, according to the mirror, and she fingered it instinctively, protectively, like her talisman, to make her feel less like a piece of meat than the man with black glasses was making her feel. That diamond, with a power all of its own, glinted a glorious shaft of rainbow light, just enough for the beautifully framed mirror to catch and bounce off way far out with all its might, straight to platform 2, where the girl's eye was caught by it, falling at her dangerously balanced feet, at the very split second she was about to give in and let go of her balance in front of the 10:23 from Oxford. And at that moment a passer-by happened to nudge her with a "Careful, love," so that both her feet took 2 small but critical steps backwards, just as the train rushed on by. At least, that's how the mirror thought it remembered it. And that's the scene that it played in its beautiful frame from that day. Over and over it played it, in secret delight, behind the donut vending machine. Because for some reason, the mirror's fixings had turned out to be far too tight to shift without shattering the mirror, and the man in the black framed glasses turned out to be as superstitious as he was lecherous. The beautifully framed mirror was delighted just still to be at the station, because however limited its view, and however small its world, it had found its place.